Nerd morning, everyone. My name is Jeremy, and this is my brother John. He is joining me while we're talking about video games. He is a programmer, software engineer, and so he's got some really good insight. Also, he's a major gamer. And so we wanted to talk to you about The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time and the hero's journey that was popularized by Joseph Campbell and how we feel like it can connect to The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time.
So, Ocarina of Time, it was big with both of our childhoods. It's probably one of our first memories of a big, grand adventure where you go out and you save the princess.
I feel like, for me, Ocarina of Time was one of the first foundational video games that I played, specifically on a console, that just opened the world of what video games are able to be. It's the one that grabbed me and said, wow, this is amazing. There's a lot of potential for learning stories, having adventures. Games are super cool because you are second person storytelling, and you are the hero playing out these adventures. And I just thought that was really cool. And being this hero was really, really cool to experience and to explore.
Oh yeah, for sure. You are the hero. You get to save the princess. The choices you make are what affects the game, and you get to experience everything firsthand. So, that being said, let's talk about how Ocarina of Time fits into a good chunk of the hero's journey.
Yeah, so the hero's journey was mostly popularized by Joseph Campbell. He developed like 17 points, and he broke down particularly Greek Roman literature, and his idea was that this would fit, all these elements would fit into any epic narrative, and that every story would have these type of elements. And I think that most of the elements that he described fit into things, and I think there's now been a lot of like simplified or explored other ways the hero's journey in various stories. But essentially, like, if we're looking at like things like Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Wheel of Time, Harry Potter,
anything.
We see a lot of the hero's journey elements, and so we thought we'd talk about how those things kind of tie in again with Ocarina of Time. And I guess starting out, we start with home. So in a lot of the different stories inside of the hero's journey, they start off kind of in this little village, and there's stuff pulled outside of kind of the things. And really, this is a narrative device because we've got a lot to learn. And if we are kind of pulled off on the little village and he's, cutting little trees or different things, here we're in this forest with these like fairy people, that we aren't inside of Hyrule. We're kind of connected to Hyrule, but we're our own little thing. And so if you don't know everything, you're able to learn it.
Think about this as kind of the tutorial stage of the video game, where you get out of your house and you have the little Kyorki children, and they give you little tasks to do, like picking up the rocks in the garden, teaching you how to target so you can talk to the person up on the ledge. These are little things that just familiarize you with home.
Yeah, and every story is going to require you to learn some things and start you off at a certain level. And this is, gameplay is a whole nother element that video games have to tell a story beyond just simply like the mythology of the story and how things operate in the world and the magic systems and all these other type of elements that Link has to learn and discover as we play through the story. We also have to learn the mechanics of the game, and home is where we learn that. Ultimately, after we get that, we have to have a call to adventure. This is where in a hero's journey that Gandalf pops up and says, we're going to go on an adventure, or we have this type of thing where something is going to have to happen and you're invited as the hero to take part in this experience.
So in Ocarina of Time, you get summoned by the Great Deku Tree. He has some sort of problem and issue, and only you can fix it, apparently. So he sends Navi the fairy to go get Link and bring him to him.
So with that, to this call adventure, he goes in, he meets the Great Deku Tree, he gets some supernatural aid. We get Navi, and Navi is a really important aspect of the game because it helps with gameplay. We get this information kind of almost on our shoulders saying, hey, listen, this is something you need to know. And that's a huge help. Also, we're blessed with the ability to perform levels of magic. Now, Link's magic is pretty minimal. He is mostly a swordsman, but he got some of these magical elements that get to help him throughout that experience.
And while he gets most of those magic things later, he does get magic items. The very first thing you get in the first dungeon is a slingshot, which, while it's a weapon, that's kind of your first magic item to help you along.
And with that, the hero is supposed to grow and progress, and we see a lot of those types of things fed through. Video games are a really strong element for the growth of a hero because inside of video games we have like leveling up, or inside of the Zelda games, particularly Ocarina of Time, we get heart containers, and those type of elements physically manifest the growth of the character. And that's told in other storytelling methods in other type of mediums. Also, we get a mentor. We have to have certain mentors to guide us, and I think that Link gets several. One of them, I think, is the Great Deku Tree. He kind of goes in there and says, hey, listen up, this is kind of what's going on. You need to pay attention. And he gets some of this foundational instruction. Navi, which we also kind of mentioned, is kind of this guide that we get.
And occasionally the owl Gabora shows up and gives Link some key information as he goes along that Navi cannot provide.
Yeah. And I think that this is interesting because this is where video games are a little bit different than like a novel, at least like an iconic fantasy story where we have Gandalf on kind of there guiding you, or you have in Mistborn, like we've got Kelsier who goes and says, hey, I'm going to teach you the magic, but then all of a sudden, ultimately, these people have to disappear in order for the hero to be able to emerge. And we see like the owl less and less as the game progresses. Mm-hmm. And we have other things that we're getting our information from, and we're having to discover that information ourselves.
A thing that is kind of harder to portray in video games sometimes is one of the other steps, the refusal of the call. An important part of the hero's journey is usually the hero gets called to be this grand hero, go on this grand adventure, and initially he doesn't want to. It's very apparent with someone like Bilbo Baggins, who flat out didn't want to, or Luke Skywalker, who honestly just wanted his power converters.
Right? Yeah, that's like a really big element in a lot of the stories that we see that our hero's journey is we're like, no, I don't really want to do that. And then something dramatic happens, and then they're like sucked in. They like make that decision after they're like, no, I don't want to do that. And I think that we see that a little bit, particularly when Link gets his first Ocarina. He maybe has this moment of, I don't know, but I don't know if that really constitutes. That's maybe one where the hero's journey is that particular element's a little bit softer. Maybe that's just simply the medium.
Quite possibly. Or quite possibly the way that video games go kind of has to push you along. So, I mean, there are some things implied. It's implied that you leave the Korok Forest, you don't get to really come back.
Yeah, and that's definitely an important element inside of the hero's journey, is because once we get out of there, we get something that is called crossing the threshold. And this is like if you're talking like a classical Greek narrative, if the hero is going off to go inside of hell to find this spirit, and he's going to bring it back, like rescuing them, they're going to Hades or whatever, that's going like from the world where we live to the underworld, and everything's taking place. And I think that's a really easy comparison, because you're like underworld versus overworld, the earth, regular world, that's something that like is easy to distinguish. But in most her stories, it's like going from the Shire and the safe thing back to the rest of the world that's huge and expansive, and that's kind of like crossing the threshold. And in here, once he leaves that, enters to Hyrule, he goes through the field, and he goes and meets Zelda. That's really the time when all of a sudden he's really entering a whole new world.
Yeah, he gets very much thrown into this massive quest that this princess is asking Link, like, basically, hey, fairy kid, you showed up. I have this major problem. I think it's going to ruin the entire kingdom, and in order to prevent it, I need you to go and get the 3 spiritual stones, and we can try to steal the Triforce before Ganondorf gets his hands on it.
Yeah, like, he gets the first Spirit Stone from the Great Deku Tree, but at that point, he's kind of like, here's this token from me. Now go and see Zelda. I think there's something more that you need to be doing. But we're not really, like, thrown in to, like, I guess basically you call it like the belly of the whale is kind of the phrase, until we get that. And once we enter into those other quests to get those other 2, we get kind of that belly of the whale.
Which is an ironic name for this because quite literally you go inside of Jabu Jabu the whale and you have to retrieve one of those spirit stones from inside his guts.
Yeah. Which all water temple elements are always the hardest in Zelda. I think that's just something that we can say is consistent, is I'm always like, oh, the water things. They're always the most challenging. But essentially, he gets some of those trials, and he goes through those things in that initial stage, and we go through there to ultimately a point where there has to be a fall. And this may, I think, if in a lot of narratives, be kind of more farther along to closer to the end, after he kind of gets through a lot of his journey, then he gets the opportunity to be reborn and then move forward. But here, actually, I think it happens pretty early. I would be saying that this is kind of when he finds and pulls the sword and all the other things that go from there.
Definitely. Zelda's plan basically involved her, as a kid, sending another kid to go and mess with godlike power that was sealed away for reasons. They are messing with things way over their heads, and they have no idea what the repercussions are. And the exact repercussion this time happened to be when Link pulled the Master Sword being kind of the gatekeeper, determined that while Link had a good heart, while he basically was hero potential, he wasn't ready yet. So what it did to Link was it sealed him away for 7 years. This is kind of like the death of a hero. He was gone and absent for a huge period of time. At which point, the gate being wide open, Ganondorf strides in and he grabs the Triforce.
Which, of course, has horrible ramifications and makes the future of Hyrule, like, apocalyptic. And here, I think we have this like thing where the hero has to figuratively die or fail so dramatically that they then have to be able to rediscover their greatness and have that potential given to them so they're able to move forward. This is like seen as the great discovery of all the things that they have that kind of culminate together. And inside of this happening so much earlier kind of manifests in him waking up in this adult body with this adult potential, now being able to wield the sword in truth and having access to essentially time travel by putting it in and out. But he still has a lot of ways to go, and he's got a lot more trials ahead of him.
Mm-hmm. So, kind of the first help he gets as he wakes up, we have something in the hero's journey which I believe is called meeting with the goddess, or in this case, meeting with the sages. So the first sage that he runs into is Rauru. I think I got that right.
Yeah.
Anyways, he's the Sage of Light, and he's the one who wakes Link up in the spirit realm and says, hey, dude, I know you're a little kid, but you're an adult now somehow. And here's the Master Sword. Here's a little bit of background of Hyrule, and everything's messed up. Go fix it.
So he goes from this spirit world, meeting Rauru, the Sage of Light, and he's given this big task. He has to go in and go to all these different temples, awaken these other sages. And this is interesting because in a lot of like the Greek narratives or other type of things, meeting the divine is honestly in a lot of fantasies sometimes pretty downplayed, but it can be like for him here it's like it's spread out. That he meets Rauru, he's given this guidance, but every time he defeats a temple, he gets more of these sages, and he kind of touches in with the divine, because these are kind of like divine, like spirit beings in some ways. As he goes through the trials, he is able to also become more of a hero, and ultimately what he's trying to be able to do is fix his really big mistake.
The point of the hero's journey called Atonement, which really for Link is both fixing the mistake of the collapsed kingdom of Hyrule, and more for him becoming the hero that he was, in a sense, destined to be.
Yeah. And with that, as he goes through all the temples, he does grow and change, and there comes to be a point when this little village boy has to become the great hero of time, and that is a huge change. And one of the things that we really love and resonate inside of the hero's journey is that we all kind of feel like an ordinary person, and here we see this ordinary person progress to the point where he becomes the hero of time, a foretold and foreordained destined hero who's going to go and confront this big evil. And we have that transformation, and that transformation is called an apotheosis. An apotheosis is becoming a divine being, or not necessarily like becoming a god, but becoming this like ultimate destined hero. And really I think the moment where that actually all comes together is when they try to actually fulfill the prophesied destiny. That being, at this point, confronting Ganondorf.
So Ganondorf and Link have their big clash. Ganondorf steals Zelda away, and Link has to go save her. But ultimately, when Link arrives victorious after this battle, he has fulfilled everything. He is the ultimate hero, and he gets to move on to the ultimate boon, or the reward for his efforts as a hero.
The things that he gets, that ultimate boon, is, well, he gets the Triforce back, gets to put it back to where it's supposed to be. He gets that, back, and what that does is it makes Hyrule safe. Ganondorf is defeated, and they're able to go back in time so that dark reality isn't his reality, and he gets to become young again and to live out his life, obviously changed and transformed, but with that he is able to go back, and one of the big things inside of the hero's journey is the return home. And he also gets the freedom to live his life, which opens the doors for more adventures and more complications in the future, of course.
For example, the sequel Majora's Mask.
Right? He goes out and tries to find Navi, who's essentially left him, and leads into all the other adventures moving forward.
So that is how we feel that Ocarina of Time fits into a version of the hero's journey.
Yeah, so the hero's journey is a really interesting storytelling mechanic that is used to set up and to describe how a character progresses and grows, and the type of things that go into a meaningful story and character, particularly in fantasy or epic stories. And I think that video games really play hold into those type of elements because video games are a storytelling medium. And they're an amazing storytelling medium that does some things that are unique to them and that are really, really amazing. And I love that Zelda is a great example of a hero's journey because it's an amazing and really fun game, like this one particularly, and just the franchise in general.
Well, yeah, as you mentioned earlier, there's no other medium where you are the hero. You go save the princess, you can read about other heroes in a book, you can watch other heroes on a film, but when you pick up a controller, you're the one who becomes the hero. It's all of your actions that lead you through this journey, and you get to take it yourself. And that's extremely unique.
Oh. So again, thanks for my brother John being able to be here. An exceptionally talented and knowledgeable individual, super nerd like me. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.